Thomas in Poland wants to know how to apportion his budget when it comes to putting together a new stereo system. And it's a great question. He writes, I was wondering if you could give me some general advice. How do you best spend your money when buying a system? Let's say I have $1,000 or $2,000 and I want to buy speakers, an amp, and a DAC, and all the relevant components. How do you apportion? Do you put the most money into the electronics? I mean, there's certainly more electronics than there are speakers, or do you put them into speakers or whatever? It's a classic problem, and a good one too, because I think there's a lot of confusion on that. Now, the fact is, most of us put our pieces, our systems together in pieces, okay? We collect this, we collect that, and over time we build a system. It's relatively rare that somebody just rolls their sleeves up, grabs their checkbook, and heads out and buys an entire system. It happens. Without question, it happens, but it's not all that prevalent. But let's say, in direct answer to his question, which way to go? In my opinion, and I'm an electronics manufacturer, my opinion, you put most of your money into loudspeakers. Now, I know that the turntable manufacturers would consider that to be heresy. They'd sooner, you put your money into the front end, and everything else, if you can't get it, what's the old line? If you can't get it off the record in the first place, what the hell difference does it make for a good pair of speakers, right? And there's a certain logic to that, but it's also twisted. It's what I like to call Pretzel logic. Because while that's true and rather irrefutable, the opposite isn't being covered. Because no matter how good the source is, if you can't reproduce it, then it truly is meaningless. Doesn't matter, right? And we don't restrict ourselves to sources these days. For the most part, we'll have a combination of turntable, of streaming, of CD, and even if we don't, you don't want to focus everything on the electronic chain. While it's important, there's a couple of reasons I'll give you not to do that. And again, I'm an electronics manufacturer, so I'm telling you, go out and spend money with the guys that make speakers, because speakers are the core and the critical element of any high-end audio system. So I recommend that people use about 2/3 of your budget. No less than half should go towards your speakers, and typically, let's call it 60%. And the other 40% we can put towards sources and controlling things like preamps and power amps and all that. And I said I would give you a few reasons. One of the things to consider is that if you invest your money in great speakers, that's a wonderful foundation for your system. Once you have that foundation, you can start adding into it. You could start, for instance, by, let's say you had $2,000. So if you put $1,500 into a great set of loudspeakers, and you only had $500 left, you'd be okay, because you could take that $500 and go down and buy a cheap receiver and a CD player and be happy, okay? And it's not a high-end system, but at least you got music, at least you're playing something, and you're starting. Later on, you trade that receiver in, you get yourself a decent this or a decent that, maybe you upgrade to an integrated, whatever you want to do. You at least have the opportunity to start building up your system from there. But if you've got crappy speakers, then no matter how good your electronics are, you're going to be wishing that you had taken my advice. I always like it when people take my advice. So, from my perspective, speakers first, get the best you can afford, and then start building up your electronic chain. Thanks for the question. Bye.